Well, thank you for having me tonight. This is really a fantastic turnout, and the Osprey, it's the perfect time because they are coming in literally by the day right now. I really saw our first one at Jug Bay on the 22nd of February and did not see it for about the next 2 weeks. I thought we were going to have more early arrivals, and then suddenly now after around St. Patrick's Day they started coming in. That's the traditional time that they return for years, but over the 30+ years that I've worked down at the Patuxent River Park and in the Jug Bay area, the Osprey has steadily come down in its arrival time. And I assume that's due to climate change. It makes every bit of sense because the birds are so dependent on the fish being available in the water temperature. So they've been warmer than they've ever been in the last 20 years or so. So let's go ahead and start. Just for those of you who aren't familiar with the area, could those lights dim at all? Is it possible?
Oh, actually they could. If someone can reach back and turn up like the two on the... Yeah, that's awesome.
That's
Thank you.
better right there.
Thank you.
I know from some of you in the back it's probably a little tougher. Okay, good. Good. Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with Patuxent River Park, like she said, I work for Maryland National Capital Park Planning Commission as a naturalist there. We're on the middle area of the Patuxent. It's 2,000 acres here at Jug Bay on the Patuxent River, Prince George's side. Jug Bay Wetland Sanctuary is located on the eastern side of Jug Bay. And you can see we're kind of around the midpoint of the Patuxent River. The river begins, you can see as you come in through the mouth down here at Solomon's, travels about 115 miles up to Carroll County and Howard and Montgomery, where they all come together. And you can see along the way 2 dams, Triadelphia and Rocky Gorge reservoirs up in this area. Patuxent Research Center, the federal facility research, done a lot of cooperative work with them. And then here we are about 45 miles approximately north on the Patuxent River. Those marshes there are really fantastic, the largest freshwater tidal wetlands in the state of Maryland. They have a designation nationally under NOAA and Maryland DNR as National Estuary Research Reserve, one of 29 places in the country that have that designation. It's just spectacular, the diversity of the marsh, the plant life. As she mentioned, the wild rice is one of the big features of the Jug Bay in that part of the Patuxent River. It only grows on about a 10-mile stretch of the river, compared to less than 10%. It's really the beauty and the amount of scenes I've witnessed over the past 38 years being there total, just spring, summer, fall, winter. Moonrise over the Merkle Marshes, spectacular. Over 10,000 geese winter in this area of the Patuxent River. It's the main concentration of them on the western shore every January. Bird populations, fantastic. Over 300 species of birds occur there. That's 3/4 of all the species you can see in the state of Maryland have pretty much been seen at Jug Bay and the surrounding areas. Great blue herons nest there in multiple colonies. I've seen their numbers increase over the years. Other wading birds like the great egrets and even the least bitter, which is a species that is a species of concern in Maryland, and the Jug Bay was named a IBA, a report bird area under Audubon, National Audubon in Maryland DNR. So we have very high nesting numbers of the least bitter there, the smaller cousin of the great blue. So of course the bald eagle. This bald eagle was one of the most beautiful ones I've ever had the opportunity to hold. This was a rescue bird that we were releasing this day. So his breeding colors, his bill, his head was the snow white. Many of them have a lot of brown flecks in them. This one was as perfect as like a painting was of an eagle. And it was really spectacular to get some shots of it right before we released it. But I've seen the eagle population grow from, I remember seeing my first one there in 1978. Only one nest we knew of in the entire area. Now I've just seen 2 or 3 new ones pop up just in the last year or so. And of course, them alongside the Osprey. It's been a nice, mating of the two beginning to increase over the years to see them both rising. But of course, the Osprey is well ahead of them. Now, as we get to late winter, this time of year, a couple of years ago, our boardwalk's covered with snow. Sometimes as late as March, we get this. But I always know that it's not far away. The Ospreys are going to be here any time after this. We just had the snow the other day, and I was thinking the few Ospreys over here must have been thinking, why didn't we stay down in South America? So, but here that one day, you finally hear that. Let me get my whistle wet. You start to hear that. I can't get it going here tonight. But Pandion haliatus, the osprey, it really is an amazing species. I've really been blessed with the opportunity to work with this bird over 30 years, particularly with a fellow named Steve Cardano, who had first introduced me to it. I always wanted a bird band from the time I was a kid. But the osprey is really the symbol of spring to me. So they're appearing every year around St. Patrick's Day, but like I said, it's been progressively earlier over the time. The osprey is one of the most widespread birds of prey in the world. It's found in every continent but Antarctica at one time or another. There's 4 subspecies of ospreys found throughout the world. We have the North American, there's a Caribbean subspecies, an Australian subspecies that doesn't really migrate, and then one down the Asian, the Eurasian. So those 4 are the ones recognized, essentially the same species. These are all subspecies. It is unusual to have a species that widely distributed and being as successful as they are. They are incredibly adapted to what they do best, and that's eating fish. Call it the sea hawk, the fish hawk, other names, but they always are around a body of water, and throughout North America, the range is very widespread. I'll show you in a second. But come down with using incredible vision and speed to come down and extend those long legs into the water to capture the fish. One of the interesting things is people always wonder, osprey, where did it get its name? But it's believed that originally, a long time ago, they were first described the name osprey back in the 1400s. But people believe that it was probably derived from medieval Latin, avis prede, meaning bird of prey. Another interesting story about it is that the Lammergeier vulture in Europe is very similar to this, and it has a dark eye band and markings, but obviously no relation whatsoever. But this bird often picks up bones. It's how it feeds and drops bones to break them on the rocks. So the name ossifragia, or bone breaker, came from that. Some people believe these 2 birds were maybe confused because they both were carrying an object. Often the bones are larger than the fish, sometimes they're quite large bones, so the bird could break them up and swallow whole the bone pieces. But I like the one avis prede better. So the osprey, you can see the range extends from all the way up here, almost 2/3 of Alaska, all the way across Canada, down to the Hudson Bay, and this is all the breeding area. You can see along the coast. Chesapeake Bay has some of the largest concentrations of the 48 states. There, Florida, up here in the Pacific Northwest, and down here, and then Maine. Over here, Maine has pretty good populations along the coastal areas. But as you can see, the purple represents areas where they basically spend year-round. Over here in Baja, California, and in Florida. And some in Florida do migrate, but the majority of them migrating are coming from all these northern states and provinces, continuing down usually across Cuba and into South America, where they're winter residents only. But the interesting thing is they don't breed in South America. There's a lot of theories as to why. They'd be super concentrated, but they're very numerous all along the Amazon in Brazil and in northern South America. But young birds that leave here stay down there for at least 2 years. So if you combine all those birds with each year's birds migrating down, the young of the year, with the adults, it would get quite concentrated. So they gradually spread themselves out. They probably developed that over tens of thousands of years and during in between ice ages. Let's get one here. So there's about 450,000 estimated individuals in the world of ospreys. It doesn't sound like that many when you think about how many people are on the planet. So, but it's not a species considered of concern in general because of its widespread, on multiple continents. It really is amazing how little it's changed. It's basically it goes back probably about at least 10 to 12 million years as the bird we see today. The last 5 million for sure. There's even some ancestors of it that go back even further, maybe 20 million years. So it's very, very successful, and it's been able to multiply on all the continents except Antarctica. So it shows you its ability to capture fish and adapt very well to humans. This is one of the key features of the bird, is its ability to adapt and live close to human proximity and still thrive. As a matter of fact, it's booming partly because of human activity, and one of them is nest towers and platforms. The bird has become almost completely dependent on man-made structures now throughout North America. So you can see one thing they have is they have unique adaptations because they're the only species in their group, their only family, the Pandion. And so because of their unique features, that's why they're listed separately. I mean, of course, the long legs, very little feathering on the lower portion. Their talons, they have a reversible talon. They can swing front to back. Only owls have this also in birds of prey. If you look at the talons close, they have small scales. If you look under a microscope, that were pointed backwards to help them grip. And their intestine, their gut, has a very long, much longer than the average bird of prey, that allows them to digest bones and scales and everything. And they say that humans, of course, have documented them and used them in a lot of different things. The Seattle Seahawks, named after the osprey. This actually, you can see this mask. It's a transformation mask. This thing opens up. It's wood. The Salish Indians in Northwest use totem poles often to represent different things in their spirits and in their culture. And so this mask opens up to a human face inside. It's really neat to see the color version of that. But they designed it, then they redesigned the eye to make it look a little more fierce, you can see, compared to the original one now, the Osprey. And the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, the Seahawk is their symbol. St. Mary's, my alma mater, is also a Seahawk now. We used to be the Saints, but there was too many schools named the Saints, and they changed it. And this thing, somebody gave me this at a Southern Maryland Audubon, Maryland Osprey poop, but it's chocolate nut toffee. And when I got this, I said, wow, what a great thing to market here in our park. So the funny thing is, I looked at the back of it. It was really delicious, I will say, the name sounds bad. But it's made in Oregon. It has nothing to do with Maryland. I said, well, I had to show that anyway, because I thought that it was a great marketing tool, though. So, as an osprey, one of the things unique about it is their ability to spot a fish from great height and come down on it and lock into this target and bring it down and literally judge in the water. Here you can actually see the fish just barely on the surface. This is a dead fish. It's a white perch. And the talons you can see spread about 4 inches. And they close so rapidly. They've timed them out in studies as fast as 2/100ths of a second that they can close on a fish. Involuntary reflex. And it's really incredible to see them. They average is about 1 in 3 dives that they get a fish, but sometimes they'll snatch it the first time. But this one really has its vision locked on. The ability of their eyes to focus from great distance to close up very rapidly is amazing. And you can see the long legs as they extend down. One of their really unique adaptations, how long they are compared to, say, a red-tailed hawk. And very few feathers, very thin feathers, so they don't gather and suck up water like a sponge and make them heavier. They want to repel the water as quickly as possible, so most of the leg is actually scaled. So here you can see as the bird is about to strike, it folds its wings back, and to protect them from the impact, pushes the feet out in front when just seconds before the feet would have been behind it, and they come forward to break the impact and grab the fish. But also the nictitating membrane is just now beginning to cover the eye. That also is a really good protective feature they have. So these are shots that we got one day out on a photography expedition I was doing. Had a group of photographers, and the opportunity was unique because it was a gray morning, perfect glass calm water, and you could see the reflections we were getting. And a commercial fisherman was putting out fish that he was pulling out of his net that were freshly dead. So they were still, the osprey would eat them. Normally the osprey, 99.9% of their diet is fish, but they won't take a fresh fish if it's just recently dead. So they were, in this case, they were coming in and grabbing some of these fish he was tossing out. So it was quite a rare opportunity from a boat. We were in a pontoon boat. We stayed there for 2 hours shooting these shots. So right after the osprey comes in and grabs it, it'll begin to rotate it with those talons, and allowing that reversible talon to bring it to the front and get it aerodynamically placed so that it's not creating drag, especially when the fish is alive and struggling. Many times you'll see them with small fish, but they can, an average fish they might catch is 150 to 300 grams, like 5 to 10 ounces of typical fish weight. That would be enough to sustain them for most of the day. If it was a 300-gram fish, that's more than enough. Osprey, typical size as a female is around 1,800 grams, which is about 4.5 pounds. Males about 1,400 to 1,500 grams, around 3.5 pounds. Males are about 1/3 smaller than the female. So they need more to eat, obviously, the female, because of larger body mass. There's a reason for that. I'll get into that in a few minutes. But 1 to 2 fish like this size here would be enough easily to sustain. The hardest thing they do is hovering to get these fish other than migration. Here you can see that this is a good example if you're not familiar with them. This brown marking across the chest they often refer to as a necklace, or the markings of a female. Some males have that, but the majority of the males are clear white there, and I'll show you some comparisons as we go along. They're looking at some of the adaptations up close that they have. Of course, they have these hackles on the back of their head and neck that kind of set them apart. Some birds of prey have that, but they don't often stand up like that. So whenever you say somebody's got their hackles up, you know they're usually mad at you. Well, this osprey is mad at me right here because I'm holding her. This is a nice adult I just captured. She has if you look at other birds of prey, the nostril here, it's just a solid, built into the beak right in the area called the cirrus, and it's just a solid hole. This is actually soft and fleshy, and it can close the valve of it as they strike the water. They literally close it and they keep water from rushing up into their sinus cavities. So it's a really neat adaptation. You can see the bill is black with a bluish base around that cirrus. This tip is extremely sharp, and it can cut, I've watched them cut right through catfish bones, the spine, cut the tail. They'll swallow the tail whole. They'll eat the entire fish. They're able to digest every part of it, except one thing they never can get down is a large catfish or medium-sized catfish. The skull is very thick and bony. It's much larger than other fish skulls. They can't break it down into pieces. So those you find in the nest all the time, up around the jaw area, the upper skull, and part of the backbone. Very hard. That's the only thing they can't consume. But everything else, any other normal fish, they can consume it completely. I watched them choke the whole tail down, fins and all, right down past it, and digest it. They don't really cough up pellets like a barn owl does, but they do sometimes bring up some of the remains that did not get digested. You might find piles of loose scales and bones left in the nest or near the nest sometimes when they do, but they usually fall apart very quickly. So here's a good example, another one of a female with the brown markings on across the chest area. They all have that dark eye band. Even when they're hatched, the day they come out, they have this small eye band. That eye band is believed to probably absorb light, just like a football player uses eye black under their eye. That really cuts glare down. And so also you can see some studies have shown that they may even have a type of oil that coats their eye that actually acts as like a polarizing effect, that it can cut down glare on their eye. Their visual acuity receptors in their eye, a human generally has about 250,000 or so of these receptors, but they have upwards of 1.5 to 1.8 million of them in their eye. So it gives you an idea of how much sharper their vision is than humans. They don't necessarily see in a binocular power eye, but they are able to focus with an acuity that is beyond our imagination, really, and see a fish. Imagine when they're hunting a typical height of, say, anywhere from 10 meters, 30 feet to 120, 130 feet high. I've even seen them higher than that, 150 plus, and spout a fish in rough, windy conditions in the swimming below them, and how they can see it and time the coming down out of the sky, 30 to 40 miles an hour, impact it and catch that fish on the first try. It's really a remarkable feat. Bald eagles can't compete with the ability of an osprey. They really are the best, probably, fishing diurnal bird of prey and the most widespread in the world. So it's quite an adaptation. Their wings, another thing, is they have very long, thin wings. A red tail, for example, which is a similar size, a little bit smaller, but their wings are usually broader looking, not as long and pointed. Ospreys' wings are fantastic for long distance migration. They're much more of a powered flyer. They're flapping their wings much more often than many other birds of prey do, so they often use more energy. So you see here one grabbing the fish backwards, and this looks like a male in this case. This one's very white around the chest area, I'm noticing. You can see, as I was saying, in close proximity to humans, here they are fishing right next to the guy. The ospreys, 10 of them came in, and when they saw this guy's boat, they recognized his boat. Once they learned he's out there during the run of the perch, and as these white perch were coming, the ospreys figured out that, hey, this is an easy way to get breakfast. And so they would hang around this guy's beat up old blue boat every morning. He was out there collecting and putting them in the baskets, the fishings, collecting out of the nets, and they would sweep down and snatch one as he tossed them overboard. Yeah, 10 of them at once. It was quite a rare opportunity. Here's one of the bands you can see that I put on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, USGS now bands, but put on the leg. That one was an older one. You can see it's kind of stained and a little worn looking, and that fish got snatched actually by one head. There's a good example of a male. Sometimes the male's eye is a little darker, and the female's is a little brighter yellow, and the male's is often a little bit darker, but here you can see the chest very white on this and smaller. And look close up at the talon, just shows you one of the other adaptations. This is a youngling. The talon is the fastest growing part of their body during the nest process. The young birds hatch, and about 8 weeks later they can fly, from around 7.5 to 9 weeks. And depends on how good their parents are doing in feeding them. But they grow these spicules on the bottom of their toes. You can see these little spicules or spines. These are very small. They'll get sometimes about double that length. And these little fleshy, spiny growths allow them to help grip the fish better. Other birds of prey don't have that. So in addition, the talons are a little more recurved than the average bird of prey. And they're round and smooth, as I've said, but they have a little reverse. You can't see it with the eye without magnification. Little grooves in them that help grip the fish, kind of like the barb on a fish hook would do. But these feet are fully grown by the time the bird is about 5 to 6 weeks old. They have maxed out. It's incredible. So that's why I can tag them actually a week or 2 weeks at least before that, because the leg bone is already very close to its maximum size by that time. They need those feet developed fast so that parents can quickly turn over the feeding duties to them to tear them apart on their own. When they go down to catch the fish, the male especially, he does all the fishing, he will get it and eat the head off first, and just to kill the fish, number one, but to help him get his energy level back up during that first hour after he's eaten it, because he likes to stay away from the nest after he delivers the food. Some males will help feed, but the majority of them bring it in, drop it off, and then off they go. They're really good. They don't specialize in just one species, but it always depends on what's abundant at the location, whether it's a freshwater tidal marsh like ours or whether it's out in the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay, they're going to eat more menhaden. That's the known diet there. But menhaden populations have declined a lot because of overfishing from the commercial industry. It's taken millions, tons of them have been removed. Of course, they're a big part of the whole ecosystem. So, in the food chain, they're critical. So many of the ospreys around the bay have actually declined somewhat. But they do estimate, I've seen some estimates anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 pairs on the bay. That's Virginia and Maryland, when it used to be 2,000 when I started this. And Maryland still was ahead of most other places in the 48 states that had them. But I know from my work there's about 300 nests that I've seen attempted on the Patuxent River. Probably a few more than that I've missed, but I'm pretty thorough the last few years of surveying everything from just north of Route 4 down to Solomon's. But of course, there's some popping up in strange places. I'll show you in a minute. But this goldfish, this is a recent phenomenon, and so it tells you how abundant the goldfish are in the river. Because it's a freshwater area, they can tolerate, reproduce there. People have let their pet goldfish go, or from koi ponds, and they've gone wild, and they're reproducing, and some of them are 12 to 14 inches long now. And I find them in probably 25 to 30% of the osprey nests have goldfish in them as one of their primary food items. And you can see that one, I just snapped it with an iPhone. I was out there and I just had my phone, we were on the boat doing a tour, and I saw that jump up, and I kept wanting to get a picture of that. It's hard to always have, never had a camera handy when you saw them with the goldfish, but that was a good example of it. So the osprey, one other feature they have that sets them apart from other birds of prey while they're in their own family is right here is this wing joint. This wrist area is equivalent to this part of your wrist that comes down forearm to where the elbow is, then up here, this is the humerus, connects here to the shoulder joint. Well, that area here is where once they have two small bones that were once fingers in their ancient ancestors, and those fingers are fused, but the thumb is this area here. What was left of the thumb has this attachment of feathers here and here called the alula, and that really is good at helping doing fine aerial adjustments, like a plane has ailerons and other controls. This really gives them ability to get more lift. Also, that wrist joint is super flexible, more so than other birds of prey. It can shift and bend back in a way that makes it look broken sometimes. And I've seen the young ones are so floppy, you think it's broken or injured, but it's not. Once they strengthen up. But that gives them extra lift in helping propel themselves from the water, carrying a large, heavy object, a fish, sometimes as much as half their body weight. Imagine a 4.5-pound osprey. I've seen one carry a 2-pound fish. It's like a 100-pound person picking up a 40 or 50-pound fish and flying off with it. It's an amazing feat. They say pound for pound, they're probably one of the strongest birds, relatively speaking, in the world for what they can lift, a bird that size. So this gives them a lift, and also they have not the only ability to hover. There are other birds of prey that do it aided with wind, but they're better at doing it without wind and able to keep their head stationary as they're locked in. Here you can see this one was locked in, but that's why the B-22 Osprey gets its name from its vertical takeoff and landing. The Marines use and others, and they can fly like a plane or like a bird once those rotors rotate toward the front. You see those all over the Patuxent. I see them all the time down the lower Patuxent River. Now, as I was talking about the male and female comparison, here's two that I captured together. These were a mated pair. This is the female. You can see good comparison. The brown necklace, the markings. Male is mostly white, maybe a few stripes. He's a little smaller. It's hard to tell in this picture because I think he's a little pushed forward in the picture, but his head is smaller. But he almost has a cat-like look to his head. You see it, but you see how good binocular vision they have, which is absolutely critical for judging things three-dimensionally when they're diving down the fish from 100 feet plus in the air. And the male was already banded. I can see it was a very old weathered band. I think I checked it. At the time, he was 12 years old when I got it. The record for an osprey worldwide is about 32 years old. That's ancient. It's like a person living to 115. It's a really ancient time. Not many ever make it. Generally, it's 8 to 10 years. So that translates out to about an 85% survival from year to year. So if you have 100 ospreys, after about 8 years, you're down to almost zero, handful left. You made 15, 20 birds left. And so that's why it's critical for about 5 years of their life. They don't usually reproduce till they're about 3 years old. And that's if the nesting availability of sites is good. If they don't have a good nest site, like one of these nest towers I'm sure many of you have up near your homes, they will often delay their nesting. The Chesapeake Bay is well known for ospreys delaying to 5-year-olds or even older, because sometimes there weren't enough towers, but it's really become a popular thing to have these nest towers, and it's helped the population grow dramatically as a result. So here you can see a pair, another one just from a distance, a male and a female. You can see the male right here. He has a thinner profile. She's a little rounder, a little bit bigger than him. And one of the main reasons they believe that is through evolution over time. Birds of prey, and most birds of prey, the male is the one who catches the food and brings it back to the nest. The female stays with the young all the time. He might do a little incubation, but she's the one her job is to take care of the young. So a male, over time, over thousands of years, a male that is smaller is being naturally selected for. His genes are passed on because he's reproducing successfully because he's eating 30 to 35% less than her every day of his life. So imagine that extra 30-35% of food is going to her and to the young at the nest. So who's going to survive? The male that gives up the most food. His young are going to go, and so therefore smaller and smaller males have been selected for. Plus they might be a little more agile in their fishing because of their smaller size. But what's interesting in this photo, when I saw it, was on a rainy, misty day. Look at these. These are little blue heron, juvenile little blue herons sitting underneath. They're totally oblivious to those ospreys, could care less about them, because they know an osprey is a fish eater and not a bird eater. But I will say I have seen them catch a bird. I have seen one catch a muskrat, reptile, a turtle one time. Strange things, but it's rare. I mean, like I said, 99.9% of what they eat is fish. So there's only probably an owl in Africa that has exclusive a diet for fish as the osprey, but it's a very isolated area where it is not widespread like an osprey. So here, back in the old days, when I first started there, like 78, 79, here we were out there with my old boss, Rich Dolish, a whole group of park people. We had a barge here, a boat full of sticks we put in there to put in the nest. We were trying to get them established. We didn't have any nests at Jung Bay. There were none. I mean, it was the only nests on the Patuxent were on the lower part of the river. The guy that I banded under, he started the project back in the 70s. right after DDT had been banned, and he only documented about 20 to 30 nests on the whole lower Patuxent. There weren't that many, but there could have been more. He might have missed them, but they weren't anywhere near what the population is today. It's easily increased more than tenfold in 40 years out there. But we would have this big production to put these towers. We had Boy Scouts make them. We lashed them together, made all little pine, Virginia pine saplings, big 4-foot tower. Too much work, took too many people. So I said, well, if we want to expand this is a thing that I got really interested in them then when I first came there. So eventually I started making the single pole type ones and mounting with like a 40-inch square platform. The 40-inch square platform is much better than, say, over here. That's a 4-foot square some other class built for me, and they painted it camo, but I didn't really need it 40 feet. They went a little bigger than what I intended, but that's okay. That's okay because it's the Osprey, a typical nest, I looked at many, is within a 40-inch diameter usually. 3 birds can easily reproduce on that. They normally lay 3 eggs. So this one you can see, you recognize some of the people you might. This is over Quiet Waters Park, and one of the rangers there, David, and Carrie, who was like the president of the Friends group there, and Marion, who's a DNR biologist, they came out, met me over there, and we put this one up, attached it to there. So I think there was a nest one, but I wasn't successful last year. So we'll see this year, second year going into. So this one I just put up here with my now supervisor, Tommy, standing up there on top, and Michael, a ranger. We just put that one up at Asbury Retirement Community on Lower Patuxent. And the birds were nesting on top of the structure, but the dock where this picture was taken is so close, it disturbs them. So I thought if we can get it elevated one there, we had to put it on with straps, big, huge ratchet straps, and it seemed to be working pretty well. They said the birds just returned here, I heard. So just to show you the arrival dates, I kept records every year since 1985 of the first arrival dates. It's not always just me, other people see them too. The word is out. Anybody in the area of Patuxent where we are, when they're seen, I get a call or an email or something. So you can see in 85, it was typically around this time of year, around St. Patrick's Day. And it stayed there for a while, but then it gradually began to decrease. And when I see this arrival date, that's one, not just the one you saw it go by and it's there. Stayed on a tower, came there to nest. And then you see, it finally got into February after about 7 years, and it was on 228. One was seen on 228, but they didn't really appear on the tower until March 5th. And then it got down to 3.8, staying in the low 3s, March, and then 222. It dropped a lot then that year, and that bird stayed on the nest and produced. Stayed around March, then it got down to March 5th. I remember that year in 2011, four males were already here by that time. Then 28th, and then we had this, then it really went down. St. Valentine's Day, they beat that. Not St. Patty's Day, but St. Valentine's Day. But wow, I said, this is really, that was super mild. But then we had an oddball, it was the next 3 years, all in February, and then it went back in 2015 to March 8th. You know why? It was super cold in February, one of the coldest Februarys that we've had here in years. And the river, I never witnessed it in all the years I've been there, 3 decades, never seen the Patuxent frozen on March 7th. And the day it thawed out on March 7th, the next day, Ospreys appeared. The day it thawed out, the day after, it was incredible. They were waiting for it literally to get so they could fish again. It's not that they can't take the cold. They just have to have the fish where they're accessible and near the surface. So even if the water was that cold, I wondered if how they were going to do. And then last year, a leap year day, they showed up. And then this year, they just really started coming in. I was telling you, we saw them on the 22nd, and then nothing for 2 weeks. I didn't see any more. And then suddenly, they started really coming in back around the regular time. But this has been a weird winter. We had a record February warmth, thought it would bring them in, but then we got back in the cold, and I guess it delayed them somewhat. But there was some reported in this D.C. They were in there in mid-January. There were ospreys hanging around by National Airport in mid-January. So even birds winter now off the coast of Virginia Beach area, which they never used to do. So their behavior is changing, and it's happened very rapidly. So originally, those were the 3 nests we had. So we started with one, by 85, I had 3 of those nests up there, and I started to tag them. And then when I started out, young Greg and the young ospreys in the nest fighting back here after we put it back in. And I got beat up a lot over the years. I can tell you, this is one biting right into the quick of the nail with its beak. And when they get bigger like that, they can really put a good bite on you. Somebody caught that shot. Here's some of the ones, just showing you some of the various towers. This is one we had that was, it was like 17, 18 feet high. It was crazy tall. I said, I never put them up that high. It really gets risky, especially when you have a ladder in the front of a boat like that. Ladders. This is when I was doing it with Steve Cardano. This ladder here is a regular extension ladder. I use a step ladder now. I have a different boat. But I'll tell you, they don't go together. That boats and ladders, they don't mix very well. So, but Steve really influenced me a lot. He was a master permit holder for years. I apprenticed under him. I got started with it. And over the years now, I think combined with him and what I've been doing, I've probably tagged over 4,500 ospreys now in the Patuxent River. It's between 4,000 and 5,000. I've completely totaled it yet. But just at Jug Bay, it's gone from having none there nesting to one. I abandoned my first one in '83, and now I've counted up how many I've done just on the towers that I've put up there with the help of my crew and everything. We've put up, we have now 55 on the greater Jug Bay area that we have maintained. I've tagged over 1,100 produced on those towers where they didn't exist before. So we've really been able to make a big difference in the population. Here's one. You see, they've really bounced back now. So the Patuxent, I could say safely, has one of the strongest populations on the whole Chesapeake Bay. There's no doubt. They're thriving there. Here you see, this is an interesting place. They're nesting on, these are some interesting nest sites. Here's a root, and you can see the nest right here with the chicken, and there's the dog, and the tree, it's fallen over. Well, this island was out here. This is down, it's called Buzzard Island. It was on the lower Patuxent, down, middle Patuxent, really down by Benedict. That was in 1984. That island is completely gone now, disappeared beneath the waves. Storms got it. I remember the last two trees, this one here, this cedar and this oak, were the last two. They were up on a high mound of soil where the island used to be much higher level. And then they finally, I watched them topple in after two storms. They were down, and now all these trees have completely gone. There's nothing there, just a shoal that you can run aground with ospreys. There's another island adjacent to this that had riprap on it. It's still there because the riprap saved it. See, some of these early nests people have put out have really got them started with these tobacco baskets. They used it to sandwich tobacco in and take them to the markets. They're about perfect size for osprey towers. Look how this guy rigged this thing up to all kinds of sticks going every which direction. He even made a perch on it. But people really took a lot of pride in putting them up. Here's a typical couple that people I'm talking about. This guy was an old waterman. His name is Mr. Copsey, Leonard Copsey. He's got the drift-in hat on. He owned that restaurant, owns it down there on the Patuxent. And he told me he saw him in the 50s nesting out there, but on channel markers and other things originally. But then he started luring them over with the tower, bringing them in. He wanted them near his house. He enjoyed it. And every year, he told me he still would do this. He leaves every year when the Osprey leaves. He shuts down his restaurant and he flies south with the Ospreys. He winters down in Florida, so that's where he goes. So he's year round. Then he gets back when the Ospreys come back. He comes back and gets going again. So yeah. Here's, this is the bridge, the nice bridge down there heading over from Maryland into Dahlgren over there in Virginia. Look at this one built right in the middle of the walkway, perfect place right under the bridge. I was in a boat, the bird's sitting there just keeping an eye on things. This is down at Benedict. This is the swing bridge, and here's one on the structure called a dolphin where the pilings are all put together to break up ice to keep it from damaging the bridge. The thing swings right over their head with no disturbance to it. And this is a neat old mansion down on the St. Mary's County on the Patuxent. This fella put up about 4 of these towers, and he's had good success on at least 2 of them each year. So, and he came out last year yelling at me because he had never seen me. I've been coming here 30 years, he had never seen me. I was amazed, and he finally, what are you doing? And he got on my case, but once I showed him one, I let him hold one. He was my best friend. So, so it was neat, good experience for him. Yeah, this is amazing. Here, I took this one last year. This was one this guy seen me. You can say, okay, look at the owl. Owl's doing a great job watching over. Keep the osprey off there, Al, but you can see whoever sold those things, man, made millions, and they're not very effective. The osprey is not afraid of that for sure. Even the gulls aren't. So obviously he doesn't do much jet skiing, but it makes a great osprey nest platform. And then here, this bird, you can see the bird is sitting in this one, and look at the amount of sticks. And there's the upper bridge of the flying bridge with all the seats. Sticks are all piled up down here. That bird's shading young, so it's technically illegal to move that nest if it has young in it now. You couldn't disturb it. Luckily, I guess the guy wasn't there. He maybe was down in Norfolk and not on the Patuxent where the boat was moored there. So Here's one, they're trying to nest on, the premium of getting these towers now has become so critical for them, and about 70% of the nests now on the river are on structures built for them specifically. So 10% or less are on trees, the natural way to nest. So look at this one, how it's collapsing, because there weren't two of these signs. The bird sees the pole structure, which is ideal, but there's no basket. This is one of the Coast Guard markers that only has one triangular sign, so everything's falling apart on that one. And here's one, this is on a moving buoy. This metal buoy was huge, tall, and it seemed very solid. We tried to move it, I couldn't shift it. It weighed a lot of, hundreds and hundreds of pounds at least. It's all steel. But I got on there, but my weight on it though was enough to make it start to tilt, so I had to keep walking in circles till he came over to get me, because I thought I was going to dump the whole thing in, but I got off there in time, luckily. Here's another one on the Potomac River. Look how high this goes down to rocks, down like another 10, 20 feet below. And this one was inside the radar reflective ball here. They don't usually go into something like that. They don't like to be inside a tight area because of their wings, but they were doing it pretty well protected in there. Now, this is a new phenomenon. I'm actually getting calls from different phone companies about how to get them off of here. It's become a concern because the guys need to go up there on these towers to work on them. The catwalk is all covered with sticks. The walkway, the ladder pathway is blocked off, so they wanted to figure out, they're trying to figure some ways to keep them off those towers. But every cell tower almost near the river, all the way down to Patuxent now, if it's within a mile of the river, it pretty much has an Osprey nest on it. This is on the Merkel silo. This is somehow the silo got dented, and you would think that anything normal would slide right off the roof, but that dent from a storm or something allowed the Osprey to get enough foothold to get their nest, and those are two chicks in that nest. Only a huge storm would knock it off. Here's one bringing in a stick to look at the little sandwich up here at the nest. Abnormal for them, and usually they do pull it off, but it's hard to get 3 chicks to fledge from that successfully, because once they get big, that space, a 1 by 3 foot space, is not much to survive on, and they often fall in the river, drown. A lot of them end up dead that way. This one was interesting. It was on this leaning tower on the Patuxent. It was one of the channel markers. You can see it's really beat up from either boats or, I'm not sure what bent all that up like that to that height. But this one had number 21. And this bird, turned out, you can see it's got a color mark on it. It's got a color band. It turned out it was banded by Mitchell Bird down at William and Mary. And he was doing, years ago, was doing work there on Ospreys. And it just happened to be one of his birds that came up on the Patuxent. They usually, 80% of them go back to their, 80–90% go back to their birth area, their natal area. But this one didn't. And sure enough, here was this band. And when I contacted him, we found out she was 21 years old. I said, well, she's on marker 21. I said, apparently she can count. I said, so she's on her marker. That was kind of neat. That was old for an Osprey. I mean, that's, like I said, anything over 10 is doing pretty well. When you get to 15, I've got one at the park that if she shows up, she's right by Jug Bay Wetland Sanctuary, on the tower I have there. If she shows up, this will be her 20th year since I tagged her. So that would be neat. That's the oldest one that I currently know of. Her mate was back the other day, so I'm waiting to see them. The females come in usually within hours to usually days, but I have seen them arrive the same time. They travel separately, they winter separately, and yet they get back right around the same day or two. It's really an incredible thing that they have that clock in their head. So I always tell everybody that the secret to long relationship is separate winter vacations. That's why they made for so long. So, and they're happy. I saw a male Sunday. The female has just come in. He already had the nest picked out, the same site, and he's diving, doing the fish flight up and down, the clee, call. He's carrying a fish, symbolic of his providing food. And she was watching it, and then she started circling it. She went down and landed on the nest tower, and he came, dived right down and landed there, and they started mating. So I was thinking, wow, he's like, honey, we're home. So it was kind of neat to see him back there. This is on the wall of the canyon in Yellowstone. See, even out in Wyoming, here they are nesting in Yellowstone because the trout river, the Yellowstone River is fantastic. Look at the years and decades. Some of these nests have been in places 70, 80, 100 years even they've lasted. They keep decaying, but you can see all the decayed material, how it's built up and going right up the cliff, and there they are sitting there. And that's a cliff that's 1,000 feet straight down. So here on the Patuxent, right in the shadow of technology and humanity, here is the Osprey nesting on old pilings, these research platforms, and they're doing really well. And you can see right by the tower. Even with all the warm water actually has some benefit because it does attract plankton. Water temperature is a little warmer at the plant. So you get a lot of fish and plankton activity around there. So the ospreys do seem to focus around that cooling canal, and you do see it quite a bit clustered in that area. A few years ago, it's been at least 10 now, maybe 12, there was a big oil spill there, and we had to actually capture some ospreys to clean off the oil. Pepco had a pipe rupture, and almost like crude oil was coming out into the river, about 120,000 gallons. It spread for 17 miles. It definitely came at a bad time right when they would get back. So say they arrive now. They get back here in March, the male usually comes in. This is a female in this case, but building the nest, bringing the sticks in. Female begins arranging them. The male will also do some of the arrangement, pushing everything into place. They usually line it with corn stubble or corn stalks. If it's anywhere nearby a cornfield, which is often on the Patuxent, you'll see that. They love that material. There's some that actually, I've noticed, they like certain bright colored objects and things. There's one nest in there, the female, every year, there's blue women clothing in there. Either a scarf or some kind of blue cloth, and it's always blue. And it's year after year. It's a different material too. So it's very interesting. I found a squirt gun in one nest, little toys, pieces of muskrat skin, a deer hide, stuff they pick up and line it. They love black plastic because there's a lot of it by Jug Bay because there's a recycle plant and they yard waste. And they used to grind those bags up and they'd blow out in the marsh on windy days. Sometimes it was bad. And supposedly they could clean that up now, but there's still enough plastic around. They line that nest with that soft plastic. They'll use greens and leaves, but they like that plastic. I guess it draws heat, so it might help keep the chicks warm. I'm not sure. But you can see here, the male's sitting here, female's coming in behind. They begin the copulation. After they do that fish flight and the mating, they'll do this up to 200 to 300 times during the spring. Even after they've had young, I have seen them still copulate. It's not normal, but they do. But sometimes birds that are third year or second year birds that have just come back, say any that hatched in 2016, you won't see them again until 2018. They come in, sometimes they'll hang around and they're unpaired. The third year they might copulate and try to nest, but they're often unsuccessful. So he has to bend his talons, curve them in, and she lifts her tail up, and he has to lift his tail down so they connect the cloacas, the two openings, the anal opening, and connect it. And then he'll pass the semen, and she can store it for probably several weeks. She may not have to use it again, but she can fertilize all 3 eggs she's going to lay. Normal is 3, sometimes 4. I have seen 5, but 3 is what you typically will get. But she begins egg laying not long after this. And when she lays that first egg, she begins incubation immediately. So they're having what's called asynchronous hatching. They don't hatch all the same. Like a wood duck lays 1 egg a day for 2 weeks till it has 12 to 15 eggs. Lays 1 each day. Won't incubate. Does not stay in the box until they're all in there. Then she will begin incubating. They all hatch the same day, and they all leave the next day after. They're precocial, but these are altricial. They require very high intensity care and protection because they're helpless the first several weeks of their life. So they require much more activity. This is interesting here because this female is one that I tagged here at Jug Bay. This is taken in Ohio on a lake in the middle of Ohio. She went, one of the few that went out to Ohio and nested there, trying to recolonize. We've done some work to try to reintroduce them. But it was an interesting story. Those were they fit them with satellite transmitters to track them all the way down to South America. I'll show you the route in just a couple of minutes. So she's incubating. She does 75 to 80% of the incubation. Right on her chest area, down lower chest, she plucks feathers out, moves them aside, and exposes the skin so that skin can contact those 3 eggs. They need to keep them at 100 degrees for the next 5 weeks. It takes about 32 to 35 days to hatch. So she's sitting on there, keeping them very warm. They have to be bare skin or it won't work. Male during the day, he will come in and take over, give her a break, let her go out and feed. That's probably what she's doing right here in this picture. And then now the boring part is set in. Sitting there, like watching paint dry for the next month. She's waiting for those eggs to hatch. And they have an internal clock telling them when. But the thing is amazing. I had one on our cam. We're going to have a cam in operation again. It was down last year, but we're having a brand new setup, high definition. So be on the lookout for it on our pgparks.com site. You'll be able to see it in picture, sound, everything. And hope to get it set up by this week or next. But the bird, the female, got off the nest. She was inexperienced, a 3-year-old. She got off, crows came in. I saw them, fish crows. ate the eggs, pecked them, ate them, boom. Sometimes ospreys, I've seen them eat the eggs, what's left the crow didn't eat, they'll eat their own eggs and embryos, swallow it. It's almost like they recycle. They know it's damaged, they know it's bad, and they ate it and used the protein, ate it because it was dead, and they knew it. She laid 3 more. 3 more eggs came. Same thing happened again. Did it again, 3 times. 9 eggs she wasted because she didn't have the experience, and she kept getting off, and they normally don't do that. And they ended up losing, she lost all 9. But since then, she's been doing well. She had a good nest the year before, but last year she came back. She was the first one back to Jug Bay, first chicks to hatch the beginning of May, and 5 weeks old, a great horned owl came in and ate both her chicks. And I found the parts the next morning. I saw that there was no bird on the nest, and I went to the nest, and sure enough, they were just parts of the chicks left. It happened during the night. So everything goes white. So 5 weeks later, you have these 2 little chicks, at least two in this, usually 3. But often only 2 make it. I mean, if you average it all out, it's the production per nest is about 2 chicks, maybe slightly under. So you see the egg, it's kind of a cream color with a rust color markings on it. It's about the size of a chicken egg. It's not very big. For the size of the bird, it's actually small. But this one here has just come out of that egg. This literally is hours old. This one is already been out for 2 to 3 days. It has the big advantage. It's already bigger than that bird there. You can see the size difference. Its crop is full of fish, this lump. It just ate. It's nice and perky. This one's exhausted from hatching, but you can see it has that little black eye mask already, and you can see a little white egg tooth on the tip of the beak. They used to peck it open. So here in hand, it shows you the size of this in hand. Look at the talons. This is a bird that's like probably 3 days, 4 days old. The talon is literally about a 1/16 to an 1/18 of an inch long, and that's it. But in 5 weeks, it'll be 2 inches long if you straighten out the curve, but it's at least easily 1.5 inches long, fully developed. It's amazing how quick that grows. They have a little stripe on their back. They're just covered with down feathers. They really blend in. That stripe blends in with a lot of the stripes of the sticks in the nest. So this is what their mother would see. You see that bright red beak inside, that tongue area inside the beak. It makes a perfect target, and that female aims right at that target. She turns her beak upside down very delicately and feeds it, and they take it right off the tip of her beak. She can't really hand it to them right side up until they're bigger, but she rotates her head, turns it like a little table, and it's on that little hook, little tiny pieces. Eventually, when they get big, she can just feed it off right to them. But it's amazing how delicate she is. It goes right to that. And whoever begs the most, that's why number 1 is his best chance. That's the one who's going to get fed. So if the food gets poor, they're going to feed the squeaky wheel. It's going to get them fish, and it's going to grow and survive instead of all 3 perishing. The dominant one will take over, and she doesn't do it evenly. I've watched her many times. She'll feed one sometimes 50 times in a row without anybody else, even though they're begging. That one gets up in her face, the aggressive one gets fed. So it's a tough way, but the strong survive, as they say. And so here's the male's job now. He is now every day from dawn until dark. He's out now catching fish at least twice a day for himself, her, and the little ones. So when they get big, those chicks, he has to catch at least 1 fish per each bird every day, up to 5 or 6 fish or more. They're really working hard as the birds get putting in. And they're bringing them in just in the morning. I mean, it's like clockwork. In the morning, as soon as it gets light, they're out fishing in nice, calm, flat water as much as possible. Here you can see a chick waiting for food. This one here is about 7 weeks, 6.5 to 7 weeks old. It's got the mottling on its back with an orange colored eye instead of the yellow. But that mottling is really what sets them apart. That they lose that over time, but while they're in South America, the tips, the new feathers come in, the tips often wear out. They wear off and they replace it now solid brown. Here you see chicks that are about 2 weeks old. And here's 2 chicks at 5.5, 6 weeks. They're fully feathered now. Their only defense is to lay there and hide and let their camo work and blend them into the nest from any kind of aerial predator like a great horned owl, maybe bald eagle even. But this is really their best defense. They're not strong enough to really defend themselves. That's why the mother stays and the male patrols and attacks eagles all the time, those interactions. You see the eye is really a bright orange. Here's one one of those bottles I was talking about, plastic bottle. A lot of times you'll see a lot of man-made objects that they dropped into the nest here. They picked up, they caught their eye. So here's one as I peeked over the nest. This is, you see it looking eyeball to eyeball with you. It's really cute, but it's trying its best to blend into that nest, lay there with its, using its markings. And then here's one, the mother's watching over him, the little one in the foreground here. And this is what one of her main jobs to do besides feeding them is to shade them. because they really can't control their body heat the first 5 or 6 weeks. They can't thermoregulate, it's called. So they have to stay in her shade in any hot day, and at night when it's cold, they have to stay under her because they'll die very quickly in that heat. They'll bake in the sun. They get so heated up, they're panting, they can't get off, they can't fly, they can't get a drink of water. They're totally dependent on fish for all the water they're going to get for the first 2 months. So it's critical. She has to keep out of that sun or they will die quickly. And so now you see her tearing pieces of gills and stuff off here and bringing it over to them. They're all there in her face begging for it. And you can see, as I was showing you earlier, the talons, the spicules are already growing very intensely here, growing very fast. Those feet are ready to tear their own fishing part. That bird right there can feed itself now. So now here they are at about 6.5, about 7 weeks for these guys. They're within about a week of flying at that size. They have reached their maximum weight that usually the female will weigh. So these are females. You can see the brown markings here and here. These two young birds already now, you can tell they are going to be females. I always weigh them just to be, to make sure 100%. But they are really as tall. They're maybe not as fluffed out and pumped up as big as she looks, but their weights are often identical to a full-grown male. Some of them I weighed actually outweighed the mother, 1,900 plus grams. And she will cut the feedings down now to make them want to leave, to get out of the nest and begin flying. So here's one example. This one has that look on its face like, do I have to really go? And it's like she's telling me, yes, it's time for you to go. You can fly. It's like, me, Mom? Yep, that one really has a kind of funny, almost looks like it has an eyebrow raise, because that marking on its head. So they make the first flight, one of the most critical times for them, trying to get out there into the real world, flying. Many of them end up in the drink. This is when 50% of the ospreys die that first year. So of all those chicks you see, and all the ones I tag, if I tag 250, you can just figure by the time that year is over, half of those are dead. And that's the average. It's very high mortality, but it's relatively speaking, wood ducks lay 15 young, have 15 eggs, half of those are going to die, but they put out a lot with less care. These birds put out less with more intensive care, different strategy. So here you see one out, probably just caught its first fish. It's out in the world learning to fly. Sometimes within hours they catch their first fish. Sometimes it takes days to get good at it. Some of them never get good at it, and they end up, those are the ones that are weeded out of the population. Just to show you the eye color, that eye orange, here it is at about 6-7 weeks, like a pumpkin orange, gradually changes to that yellow during the next year. But we won't see that happen because they're going to be in South America for the next 2 years while that's taking place. But it really is amazing when you look at this eye, how fast that iris contracts in on objects when it's close up to its face and it's something at distance. I watch them in the nest, and you'll see them moving their head like this back and forth, looking down, and they're focusing on fish they see moving in the water. They're already alert to it, and they're looking at it and studying it, and their head goes back and forth. Somehow that movement helps them to adjust that eye onto what they're studying and looking at. So here you see 3 that are practicing. This is one of those thin nests I was talking. The bird has managed to overbuild the edges. That bird was experienced. It's got it over. But it's very balanced here. It's easy for this to fall. They step on the edge, it can break off and fall in. But here they're practicing. They're pumping up their pecs. They're pumping those breast muscles up. Over the last 2 to 3 weeks, they are constantly facing into the wind, pumping, lifting themselves off the nest and dropping back, lifting themselves, flying up, building the muscle. It's amazing how weak and small they are when you look at them at 4 weeks, 5 weeks. There's no way they could fly. Their muscles are so small, but when they get about 7 weeks, you can feel the mass of muscle, how much it's grown just over that 2 or 3 week period, how much they've exercised it. So they begin to get out of the nest, and they dive in and do these practice dives. They come down. They might see a fish. They might not see a fish. They splash down, crash into the water, completely plunging in. That's how they do it. And then this one, extracting itself. This is what's the amazing thing is they're so coated with oil from all the fish they eat. It goes into their fat gland, and a gland here at the base of their tail called the uropygial gland. And this is where the oil they squeeze out and oil themselves. They really smell like a fish. They smell very oily fish odor to them. And here you see one after its first flight. It looks comical. It landed on a branch too small, didn't know that the weight would support, and it falls, it's hanging by 2 talons on this one little bent branch, trying to figure out what to do next. And if they're lucky and they can get out of the tree and get back in the air, they might be all right. But if they fall down into the marsh they often can get eaten by a predator like a fox because their parents will never find them or be able to help them. Some of them I had in old days landed on my old roof antenna. That one I was coming in with groceries, and all of a sudden a live fish falls out of my feet. And I looked up, and there it was on the antenna. I had a camera on it. I took a big shot, and the fish had holes in it. It was bleeding. It was still alive. It was a catfish wiggling all around, and there was a young bird. I startled it. I didn't know it, but it saw me, and it was eating the fish on my roof antenna. So, and there was one at our park flagpole sitting up there. It's got a band on it. You can see it. It's sitting there looking down. It comes up there, not that afraid of us, which is good, because a lot of the young ones, when they see a human or see me come up to the nest, where they see boats nearby, it does help them condition humans, so some are very, very tolerant. Here's one of those little sandwich nests between the signs. There's two in it. In this picture, I had one out, but just to show you, look how narrow the space is in there. There's not a lot of room for error, and when they get bigger and those wings are flopping around, if a big storm comes up, there's no protection. Just blows them right out of the nest before they're ready to drown. Now, some of the main dangers to ospreys, you see up here. Back in the 40s and 50s, people started spraying in the 60s DDT everywhere. They sprayed it over every wetland all over the U.S., just coated it with it. Nobody had any idea what it would do with it, how long lasting it was, didn't break down, settles into tissues of humans and animals. So they didn't know. But that DDT, till they banned it in 72, it was really one of the main reasons for the decline of all different raptors, birds of prey, anything, or other fish, other birds too, even cormorants, things were affected. Anything that ate fish was affected, and a lot of the organisms associated with the marshes. So, but that has really recovered. We found, when we first started doing it, there was still DDT being found in them, and some occasionally you do in some places, but not so much here. They do use it in South America, but we're not using it here. But it's not really a big issue. So that's one reason they've come back. Of course, bald eagle populations have increased. There were only 40 nests in Maryland back in the 70s, early 70s. Now they've really bounced back. So now you see a lot more competition between the two, and they are really good thieves. They practice kleptoparasitism, where they chase them down. They rather steal from an osprey than catch it themselves, because the osprey is better at fishing. Raccoon is one of the main factors today that I see that causes the loss of osprey nests. And you think, how does that little mammal get in here? Well, any tree nests like this, or even osprey poles, if they're near land, if they don't have a predator guard, they will climb up, go right up under, even the flat platforms, they'll hang on the wire, because I find their claw marks and hair on it. If I don't get the guard on them, they're gone. They will eat those eggs 90% of the time. They have every night, all year, all spring and summer, to figure out how to get there, and they will do it. And you never can underestimate it. Trees, that's why more than half the tree nests all fail. My success on the towers is more like 70 to 80% hatch rate in fledge. It's only 50% or less on the tree. So that's one reason they've gone up. And here you see a great horned owl. That's the only thing that can take the young out of the nest once they get to a certain size. Even up to 5 weeks, I've seen them carry off one on some webcams and take one off at night and snatch it. They chase the mother off. The mother can't see very well in the dark. The owl grabs it, and the owl has killed at least 4 females that I've documented that were eaten by an owl. I found the bodies, looked at the carcass, examined them under the nest. Didn't touch the chicks. Sometimes they leave the chicks, eat the adult. They come in at night, silent killer, right down on top of the osprey while she's dozing. I watch them at night on the night cam, because you can see it at night and see what they're doing. She's sitting there sleeping on the chicks. Boom, owl grabs it, takes it right off, eats it right there, drops the pieces, found the body below the nest with the band still on it, but it was stripped down to the bone. It's amazing. Owl did that overnight. So I was able to save the chicks, though. Here's another big danger to them today, man-made, is the monofilament. They get hung up. This is one that fell over the nest, is hanging by it. I see this every year, multiple times. Here's one that the monofilament got in the nest while it was little. It walked around with it wrapped around its leg when it was tiny, and it grows into it, and it gets tighter and tighter, and the leg is constricted. Now the foot is swollen, huge. You can see the edema, it's really swollen here. I was able to cut it out and just put some ointment on it, put it back, left it alone. Came back a week later, it was back to normal. It healed. They healed very rapidly. That's the good news. But if it was any longer, it would have severed the leg. The circulation was almost completely cut off. Here's another one. This is one I found this last summer. The leg is already gone, as you can see there. That was very sad. It's a little bit raw there on that point. It's a tough one to see, but it's just to show you why it's important to educate people about fishing line and all kinds of plastic monofilament, because this one here was twisted into the nest. We were able to save it, but it was so twisted, the line, it would never have left the nest. It could not have freed itself. It was impossible. I had to really scissor it. It took a lot of time to get it out of there with the clippers. So yeah, but that one will not make it. Ospreys don't do well in captivity. They're very high strung. If you took it in, it's most likely it's going to die anyway. It was healthy otherwise. Parents are feeding it, but I don't see how it was ever going to be able to catch a fish with that one leg, even though it could stand up. But it's adapted to it. But you just, in that case, nature taking its course is the best thing you can do for it. Here's one that has the six-pack thing around its neck, and it's twisted, and a young bird got tangled in that one. So that's another bad thing. You can always cut those things if you ever have them out there. Here's one of the things that really ospreys don't like near their nest is great blue herons. I caught this one day out in the middle of the Potomac. This osprey was knocking the heron into deep water and raking its head with its talons. When I got over to see if I could rescue the heron, its head was cut up. It had been struck by talons numerous times. I actually had an osprey, an adult male, a female from another nest, came near his nest. She attacked him. She raked his head. He attacked her, knocked her into the mud. She couldn't get out of the mud. She was too coated. So I went out and rescued her, brought her back in, washed her, dried her, fluffed her up, made her look good. You know, she was all ready to go. Thought, this bird's going to make it. Well, guess what? Force-fed it and everything, took it to the vet. It had talon punctures in her skull that weren't visible. She died of a brain infection later the next day. So the ospreys are tough on it. Her mate, though, I knew what nest she came from by the band. I watched him for 3 weeks. He sat on his nest looking for her, waiting for her to come back. It was kind of sad to see it, but then one day I saw him out doing courtship flight, and I knew he knew by timing it was time to get another mate. He didn't come 3,000 miles for nothing. So he had to make it happen. This eagle right here, so many of these eagles I've seen really come in the nest. There was a great footage. I would show it to you, but I don't trust this computer to get it up because we were having some issues with it. It had a little video. How many of you saw that video in Maine of the eagle snatching the osprey chick off the nest? You saw it, right? Not many people saw it. Well, just Google it when you get a chance. Since it's going to be too hard, I don't want to mess up the show, but Google that osprey in Maine eagle nest. Eagle attack osprey in Maine. You'll see it. It's unbelievable. This eagle adult comes up, snatches 1 out of 3 out of the nest in a fraction of a second. It happens in the blink of an eye. They even slow it down to show you how quick. That's how big and strong they are. So that eagle right there bit my nose right after this picture, and it put a hole right in my nostril. Had a big puncture in it right in there. Everybody said I should put an eagle stud in the hole while I had it. They all thought it was funny, but I felt like my nose almost got bitten off by an eagle because it was a very powerful cut hole, but lucky it was in the right spot where you couldn't see it. So yeah, the eagles, more and more competition. They are really booming there. So I see tons of interaction. Just Sunday, I saw 3 eagles chasing ospreys. The ospreys just got back, and they already have to face these eagles attacking them, disrupting their whole operation. Look, this eagle's trying to take over this osprey nest. Now, they don't nest on them, but they love to sit on them when the osprey isn't there. You never see that in the summer, though. The ospreys would fiercely attack that bird. And then here you see osprey doing what the eagle does. The kleptoparasitism, chasing an osprey, trying to steal its fish, fresh caught. And here's one where the mother was killed by the owl, and I was throwing fish to supplement the 2 young. I built that little roof thing you see, was to keep the shade, because there was no female. They were panting. You could tell they were baking to death. And so I put them under the shade, and it made a huge difference. It was like 15 degrees cooler there. And so but another female came in on the camera, and she stole the fish as the male brought them into her. He took them, and I said, wow, they're going to have trouble making it. Now there's one more thing to deal with. So I started supplementing, and they made it. Those birds, the owl never came back and ate those for some reason. They were lucky. So here's when you see them scraping the water. They're using their feet to slow down their speed, and if you watch their head, you'll see them dip their head and take a drink on the wing all the time. That's a typical way. Sometimes they're just spraying themselves down when they get cooled off when they've been sitting at the nest. And this last portion here I'm showing you, the last few slides, this is about how I capture adults. When the chicks are smaller, I can put this wire mesh trap called a noose carpet with monofilament slip nooses that are attached to the trap. And this has crab floats on it to keep it from sinking. I put it over, it's elevated above the chicks so it doesn't contact it. They're down in the bowl. Well, the mother will land on it. Sometimes I get the male, but the females are more bonded to the nest site. Once in a while I trap both. Here she's caught, snared by it. When I see her caught, I'm in a boat, I come back. This is one that had a cam on it. And she lands in the water right nearby. Trap floats, I can reach under, grab her wing, and get her feet and bring her up into the boat. You can see the nice wingspan. It's about, when it's fully spread like this, it can be as much as 6 feet. So here you see one, she's a little wet, looks a little worse for wear, but I'll tell you, actually under the surface, she's bone dry. The oil-proof feathers, waterproof feathers, her oil, they completely repel the water, but she's bone dry. That female was 9 years old. I banned her as a baby, 400 yards from where she's nesting now. She's now 10, going on 11 next year. So one of the big things is getting people involved. When I first started, I just went with Steve, a handful of people. Then I started getting more and more people interested in this, all different types of groups. PG Community College, I was getting these high school students that wanted to get into special program and do science-based research. And just a whole variety of things. But you see an example, what we get back from the banding. I often let them do the actual banding. Here's one you can see, banded on June 24, 2011. And it was found on January 2nd, 2013, 2 miles south of Procella in Amazon, Brazil. So just to give you an idea, it was a woman reported it was from the government of Brazil. So I just to show you on Google Earth from where we are here, that's the straight line shot to exactly where it was when they're deep in the heart of the Amazon. That's exactly 3,000 miles to right there. And that's probably not including the route, which they more likely took was like this. So it probably was an extra 300-400 miles easily to get to that point. That was one of my more distant returns. We've had some, I was doing with Steve, as far as Argentina. So just to show you an example of some of the stuff I collected, write down some more than this, but just here you see a weight, age, I look compare weights. Here's one that's 5 weeks old. I was telling you, at this point, they're pretty much close to their max weight. So that's a male, and that's likely a male. Right here, look at these two, another nest, Pig Point. That's the one that, that's near the floating dock. I think that's the one that has the 20-year-old female. And look at here, here are two young, 17 and 18, those are two females. So it isn't always equal in each nest. It could be 3 males, it could be 3 females, or a mixture of each. So often I would have these kids come down, and we'd spend the day with them looking at data, the bird banding lab data, had a study skin of an osprey. We would take them out, they would plot all banding recoveries on the map, took them out, and this program grew. Eventually staff wanted me to do it. This guy went on to do his PhD in Maryland on raptors because of his experiences doing this with us. And here we are, a crew of everybody in the boat. Some of the people you might even recognize. And here they are, these guys are just now putting them in. Sometimes I have Jug Bay Wetland Sanctuary interns out here with as long as mine. And we're getting a chance to do the whole process with the boat. Letting them climb the nest tower, I'll let them get them. And I kind of gauge them to see how they can do, you know, and test them as we go and work with them, get them to learn how to put a band. A lot of them doing the bird banding has really been good for them because they've actually been able to get jobs secured because of the bird banding. It was like, a lot of times that's a thing that most people don't get the experience. Here, this girl right here was Anne Arundel Bird Club. She ended up just completing her PhD on ospreys and environmental contaminants through Maryland and the Patuxent Research Center. So been doing a lot of work all over the Bay and Poplar Island. So now every year I go out to Poplar Island with her and some of the biologists there. She's now working for the EPA. She hates being indoors now. She misses this. So she goes with me now to go band out on the island where I first started with her. So we take the crew out and we do it. This is Barnett Ratner taking USGS, who's taking blood samples out of some of the birds there, looking to see if any of the contaminants they scooped up from the dredging and dumped on the island to create these islands, if it had any contaminants in it. You know what the number one thing they were finding? It's not necessarily chemicals, or I mean, it's chemicals, it's not heavy metals. It's human drugs, like things like Prozac and blood pressure medicine, stuff that's widely prescribed. It's out in the bay in the fish. It doesn't get removed by sewage treatment, and here it was turning up all over. This was interesting here. This is an old barge, the 2 chicks on the nest, and they're looking in, and inside here, something you've never seen before, here's egrets nesting inside of the osprey nest under the old barge. They were totally, the parents let them do it. So here's our osprey cam. I'm going to expand it, make it better. It runs on solar panels. This year we're just about to do it this week or next, so like I said, keep an eye. But here I just wanted to show you, look how since '85, the number of birds I've tagged per year went from 8 to I passed by 2016, I passed 70 for the first time. That's just on my nest towers to 55. It was, you know, it started out with 3, and then it was maybe 10, 15, 20, it's worked up to 55. But 70 young up there, banded over 1,133 chicks now in the Jug Bay area, not including the other 3,000 plus in the lower Patuxent. So It went down this year, though. It went down in 2016. It was 2015 this year. That's 2016. Reason is, last year we had that rainy, wet spring. It really impacted them. And here's a good example. We were kind of looking back at the weather over time and the number of chicks banded, and you can see that the Osprey is the blue, the red is the May rain totals. When you see when the rain is down, the Ospreys have been higher, and kind of vice versa. You can see again here. And then this year, look at this. The rain went way up for May. Boom. Ospreys really plunged down, and then it bounced back. Well, here you go. Here's the nest types. You can see tower nests. Okay, this is year by year. How many of them on towers in Jug Bay area? And look how many are on trees. 3 or 4 or 5 per year at the most. Duck blinds, couple, other stuff. So the vast majority on towers up there. Very few go into trees. You can see the tower makes up 85% of the nests. Jug Bay chicks. You can see the production. What it was, and all that was on in 2015. That was almost 80. We actually saw a total of 80 produced. We'll skip some of these. This is lower Patuxent showing you the numbers by year of how many that I've documented chicks or banded. Look at this, 259, 250, 244. It was lower this year. I don't think I got as many nests that year. But you can see, look at all the other channel markers, duck blinds. The numbers way lower. It's amazing how they are dependent on people now. So here's one thing we've done to help other in the past when they weren't that numerous. In other surrounding states, we sent them in critter carriers. We would select 1 bird out of a 3-bird nest, take a male or female, usually it's the males we started with, had to be a certain age to be independent. And the state would fly down, whether it was Ohio, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, and they would build these packing towers and predator guards on them. So the chicks were in here, they see this new area. They don't see the people anymore, so they feed them through it. This is what they see. They bond to this new site, and there's the hacking tower right there. So they bond to the new site, and this is where we become their home. They're putting them back in areas they were extirpated from. They were there originally, and it's actually worked very successful. And here's the little tracking chart with the solar transmitter. This is a satellite one. They're now getting better than this one. This is a few years back, 05, 10 years ago. But look, you can see that the female and the male, they left within one was like September 9th, one left on September 2nd. But they flew down here. The routes were slightly different, but they ended up down here. You can see the male was the red. He's over here on 10/6. So in 1 month, he's over here. And then you see in this here, the female is over here on the Amazon. They ended up 300 miles apart after just traveling 3,000 miles. And they literally didn't even know each other was existing there. And traveled and arrived almost simultaneously. It's amazing how it is, totally separate. And going back up, she died right here in Venezuela. Her transmitter went off. It showed a male came back overshot by Lake Erie in Canada, came back down. He actually missed his GPS, I guess, and his brain was a little off. He ended up off. So in concluding with this is what I think is so fascinating about it. The lives of them have been a little unknown. You see your Osprey come back on this tower and you don't really think about it all the time. What did that bird just see? What did it go through to get to that little 40-inch square platform? It always amazes me. When I see them, it always gives me a good feeling, even though I've seen thousands of them. Just seeing them the other day on Sunday, all the birds, 7 of them I saw, wow, they're really coming in, already doing courtship. They travel a great distance, and they're like a finely tuned athlete through millions of years of evolution to reach the pinnacle that we see today that has changed a little over several million years. So, to me, it really is one of the beauties of nature, being able to see how they fit into the ecosystem and understand more about what the importance of studying these populations are and what they go through and what they've been through to get to how they're succeeding today more than many other species are. So, famous naturalist Roger Tory Peterson once said, birds are the litmus paper of the environment. And I really agree with that. That always stuck in my head because they are really the test indicators of what we see happening in our surroundings. A lot of times we don't see it till it's too late. But watching them, see their changes in their migration, how they're getting earlier, whether the population is thriving in the bay because of the lack of food, like the menhaden decline, population decline, all these things really make it worthwhile. And being able to get people a chance to hold one in their hand and see them and have a better appreciation is one of the reasons I include so many people. I usually take between 400 and 500 people out every year. The Smithsonian group, I think, came here too. I don't think there was one scheduled for this year, but I do have another Smithsonian going from DC. But nevertheless, I don't think we've seen the end of osprey population increases in many parts of their range. So I'm very optimistic from what I'm seeing and how they're adapting even better and better. As long as the water quality stays good and fish do, I think the Osprey will continue to thrive and maybe even continue to increase. So thank you very much, everybody.